my name is Varunika, and me and my team of researchers are going to talk to you today about the ancient civilization of Catonia. Catonia was a civilization nestled in between rocky highlands and mountains and an extremely harsh desert. In the middle was a river flowing through the center of the society. Around the river created fertile land all around. I am currently the religious expert for Catonia, so I'm going to be talking to you today about their creation myths, their religious beliefs, and their arts and architecture. So, Catonia's main gods, or god, I could say, is one snake with two heads, each head with its own personality. Meliadus was considered the good snake, or the snake that had created the rivers, the valleys, and the good farming season. Whereas Antaeus, the other head, and considered the bad snake, was the one that created natural disasters such as hurricanes and floods, disease, and famine.
This is the only remaining fragment of the creation myth.
Both Meliadus and Antaeus, after creating the world, had fused together to keep both sides in balance. Catonians believed that doomsday would be whenever Antaeus would overpower Meliadus, break free, and destroy the entire world. This was similar to Egypt's myth about Apophis swallowing the sun. Meliadus and Antaeus had created 4 humans to act as stewards of the 4 minor gods: Tritus, the god of agriculture; Morphea, the goddess of witchcraft; Amphetus, the god of crafting and mining; and Cretus, the god of hunting. The way each human was assigned their patron god was a snake bite ritual, in which they were thrown in a pit with 4 snakes. Each snake represented a minor god. Whichever snake the human was bitten by, that is the minor god that they ended up acting as a steward for. This is how jobs were assigned in Catonia. The descendants of these 4 humans carried on whichever job that their human was assigned.
Note, the way Catonia's job specialization worked, agriculture workers had more kids than, say, witchcraft workers, thus keeping the balance between the crafts.
Okay, so Catonia was a very, very paranoid society. They believed that every oncomer was a minion of Antaeus, there to release him and create the doomsday. Because of this, whether harmless or not, every foreigner that stumbled upon Catonia was viciously slaughtered. Their hearts were harvested and thrown in a pit of snakes as sacrifices to keep Antaeus tethered to Meliadus. They also took any valuables or belongings that these foreigners had and threw them in a bonfire to keep Meliadus stronger than Antaeus. This, however, is the most horrifying part. We found records that show that they take the flesh, the blood, and the organs of these foreigners, and they would consume them because they believed it would give them power to be the strong nation and civilization that they were. This sadistic and barbaric display of cannibalism is what labeled them as savages in the eyes of the Sassarils, but more on that later. Their belief system also contributed into the way they elected their leader. Their leader was chosen from a pool of eligible males that they believed could lead their civilization. Because of this, the way to prove that they were worthy or not was, you guessed it, snakes. In this particular ritual, the candidate for leader was bitten by a snake that was considered holy by the entire population. The snake was religiously significant because they believed that it had the spirits of Antaeus and Meliadus in it. So basically, in the ritual, the candidate had to survive a snake bite. However, here's the catch. There were 2 snakes that looked incredibly similar. One was incredibly venomous, and its bite was fatal. However, the other one's bite hurt, but you would live. So it was completely luck of the draw how the leader was chosen. It just all depended on whether or not you got the venomous snake.
Catonia only had 2 major surviving art pieces. This is one of them. This is the most important religious work since it depicts Antaeus and Meliadus. This shows that religious artwork was heavily featured in Catonia. However, there were some architectural artwork, such as this map right here. Many of them showed maps or the way certain buildings were constructed.
discussing the social hierarchy of Catonia. Now, up at the top is the main gods that were worshipped by all the people, mainly the snake gods that we've talked about earlier. Below the gods are the leader, the supreme monarchy, was thought to be direct bloodline of the gods, and all the people around them. Below the ruler was the court system and the advisors who offered aid and counsel to the whole kingdom. Below them is the peasants and the commoners. They little money, poor living conditions, not a fun place to be in, guys.
Me.
Down here, the very not fun place to be, slaves, sacrifices, and prisoners. Now, most of the slaves come from conquered lands or wrongdoers who commit crimes against the country. The sacrifices we'll talk about later. The prisoners, often prisoners of war. Blah, 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 smarts and blah, blah, blah. So, more information over the leader in the court system is, here's our nice little display of the court system. Now, it was made up of 3 court officials. Above them was the one supreme leader of the civilization, who is said to receive direct counseling from the gods. He then would pass his knowledge on to them in deciding a verdict for the accused. The accused would come before the court for any severe crimes such as murder or theft, or anything the court seems as worthy enough and bad enough. The accusers or the witnesses of the crime may or may not have been present depending on the crime or depending on the severity. Okay. Now, depending on, normally they were seen as guilty, being the society they were, and if this was so for such bad crimes as murder, they could be sent to, wait for it, okay, they could be turned into slaves to work, let's say the fields, yes. They could become human sacrifices. Or they could receive banishment into the desert, where they are stripped of all belongings and possessions and forced into the harsh terrain, where they would most certainly die. Okay. Since the civilization of Catonia was next to the mountains, they were able to harvest ores and metals for crafting, giving them an advantage over their opponents. Now, they also were able to harvest gems that they believed gave magical powers and religious insight. Now, some tools that they were able to create was a ceremonial blade used for sacrifices we found, which was showed earlier. It was created with the metals found in the mountain with a wooden shaft. Amulets, which were worn by the high priests and the witches, created with gemstones placed on leather, necklace, yes. And it was believed to give magical powers and enhanced abilities. Now, there was a staff we found. We believe it was for religious purposes due to feathers and other tokens found on its shaft. It was created with a blend of a soft gem and ore. The shaft was made out of a steel-like material. Well, that's all for this time, guys. See y'all next time!
Catonia was thriving. It was at its best, economically, politically, and socially. But what brought them down was a civilization called Cesriel. Cesriel stumbled upon Catonia, and Catonia was useful because they had a lot of gems and a lot of fertile land. And the current leader didn't like Catonia's current beliefs, and they didn't like the sacrifices the culture made. So instead of killing this civilization, Cesriel befriended Catonia, and they eventually became friends. Later on, they shared battle strategies, so Catonia became very vulnerable. In the ceremony of the snakes, Catonia picked a new leader for their clan. And so people were not in the borders, they were not defending the borders. They were all in the town, and they were all at this ceremony. So Cesriel thought this was the perfect opportunity to destroy Catonia. So what they did was they just burned everything. So we have no evidence of Catonia anymore, only scraps of paper that we found that are half burnt. And all the information we found of Catonia was secondhand information. Wait, yeah. That's all, folks, on Catonia, and please make sure to like and subscribe and click this face, because you know what we want to. Nobody did that.
Same. Let's go.
Okay, moving to resources and tools. Now, since our civilization lived next to the mountains, since the civilization of Catonia was next to the mountains, that means that there are many opportunities open to them through crafting. See, through the mountains, we were able to get ores and metals.
That's all. Okay, that's all.